certain positions, especially in research and development, they really like those grad degrees. Um, and you also get more consideration for advancements. Um, my my dad talked about this where basically PhDs, they always get considered for like promotions first, and then they consider master's degrees and then the bachelor's. But also that depends on your performance. And you also get some extra knowledge. So there's three types of grad schools. You have your master's degree, so that's your Master's of Science in Engineering, and Master's in Engineering. Um, your PhD program, and then a BSMS degree. So we'll quickly run through all three of those. So your typical master's degree has two types of completion requirements. Um, the first one is you could either conduct original research to write a master's thesis. Now, this is generally much shorter than something like a doctorate, like a PhD dissertation. Um, and it should take around 1 to 2 years to write. The other type is you could take exams, kind of like what you're doing in undergrad. And once you pass all your courses, you're able to receive your master's degree. The typical duration is 1 to 2 years. Um, and for funding, it's rarely funded by your university. Generally, students pay tuition, and it's around the same as what you pay for undergrad. So like 40K for um, like in California students and 60K for out of California students around. And so the difference between an MS and MSE and MN is that for MS, it can be research oriented or coursework based. Some schools offer 2 tracks, which we discussed earlier. Um, and also sometimes it's branded as MSE. So there's not too much difference between MS and MSE. For MEng, it's more of a industry oriented, and it's typically just coursework and it's a terminal degree, meaning like you can't really advance further. It's often shorter with 1 year and typically focuses on professional development. And always do your research. Names can vary. Some programs are highly specialized, like CMU has all of these very special master's degrees. All right. So PhD program. Um, for a PhD, your completion requirements are you have to conduct your original research and then write a PhD dissertation. You present this to advisors and faculty members, and then after you present, a dissertation defense occurs. So usually dissertations are either as long as or shorter than your dissertation defense because you're going to get questioned a lot on it. And then it's a pass or fail. The duration is typically 3 to 7 years. It depends on how long it takes to complete your dissertation, and funding is tuition is usually waived, and labs provide stipends. So for BSMS, and specifically we're talking about UCSD, is that you get to complete your bachelor's and master's in science concurrently. It's typically a 5-year program, can be extended, and the student pays in full for this one, so it's still 40K, 60K, and whatnot. Um, and so here are the two different requirements for CSE and ECE. So CSE is a bit more rigorous. To get into the BSMS program, you need a minimum of 1 rec letter. More are definitely encouraged. Your cumulative GPA has to be above 3.4 to be considered, but it should be well above that to be competitive. For ECE, your minimum GPA is 3.0 to be considered. And if you're above a GPA of 3.5, you don't need rec letters. Also, from what I've seen is it should be pretty easy to get into a BSMS if you're above a 3.5 GPA. So for CSE, if you plan to enroll in fall 2026, you need to apply by June 30, uh, not this December like other schools. If you plan to enroll in winter or spring 2027, apply by this December. And I'm pretty sure for ECE, the BSMS is the application is open. So, so here's a quick little comparison table between your master's and PhD. On the left, on the first column, you have your the type. Second column is the master's, and third column is the PhD. And so you can see that generally masters is much shorter, and but you have to pay for it yourself. And then on the right is salary outcome for doctorates. If you're interested in that, I would look at the third group and the fifth group for computer science and also engineering. And as you can see, for computer science, your average salary is 160,000, and you can kind of compare that to the 100,000 that bachelors make out of college. And I think Kevin will take it from here. Thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take it from here. So
Right?
so the core application components that you will see when you're applying will mostly just be these stuff. So unofficial transcript, statement of purpose, and then letter of recommendations, resume and resume CV are almost the same thing. Test scores, and research or industry experience. So, while you will know what unofficial transcripts are, statement of purpose is like a 1,000 word essay for some schools where you will write about yourself and your interests. Why do you want to attend their program, and what would you want to do there? Sometimes they will have additional essays and videos. Some schools have like personal statement where you'll write more about like what you yourself would bring into the diversity of their school. Some might have like additional like 2 or 3 minute videos that you have to introduce yourself and submit that. Um, Typically letter of recommendations. There will be 3 letter of recommendations where you'll get from your professors or your perhaps like internship mentors. And Test scores. Some schools require GRE and some doesn't. It's actually getting increasingly more common that schools are not requiring test scores anymore. Um, but if you're an international student, then usually you have to take the TOEFL and submit that. And research or industry experience is the bonus. Sometimes they have like short answers for you to fill out just to state like what have you done during college. It is a plus, but it's not a requirement. So, for example, let's just look at UCSD's graduate application checklist. So if you just navigate to this page, you see that like they have the online application. You have to submit your transcript, statement of purpose, like about um just like address past accomplishments with them, for example, computer science, why you're qualified and what goals you want to do during graduate school. Also recommendation letters, and also for example, if you look at if you research each program, for example, UCSD, it says that GRE is not required, but you can still submit valid scores if you have already taken the test. This is the TOEFL or IELTS for international students, and then resume, and yeah. So those are the main core application components that you will be needing. Some of the timeline for applications are, for example, let's say you're applying for fall 2020. Oh, you're applying to get in for fall 2026. That means you have to apply by this fall, usually. so fall 2025. So what you'll be doing is like starting from spring now to summer, you research programs, build resumes, and talk to professors about potential recommendation letters. And then during fall, from September to December, you write the statement of purpose, remind the professors to submit the rec letters, and then submit the application. During the winter, sometimes programs might have interviews, especially for PhD programs. Then probably around March, you get your decisions. And then spring quarter, you would just decide. And then some programs might have visit weekends, and then might have to consider in funding or housing. And then before all of these application steps, you would typically want to decide, let's say your first year, second year, or third year. You might want to decide whether you want to apply to grad school or not. Um, and then either you want to do an MS or a PhD, and then try to make relationship with your professors or intern mentors, and then take the GRE if necessary. And so what makes a strong application? Basically, these are like the main things, but that we see patterns in a lot of successful applicants. One is alignment with faculties and labs. So like your research interests and probably your experience match well with their program. Solid GPA in relevant coursework, relevant skills and experiences in that field of research or that field of profession. Also a well-written SOP, statement of purpose. So you will want to have your clear like short-term and long-term goal. What do you want to do there? And also what do you want to do after? Some of your motivation to go to the program, and then strong recommendation letters from professors and mentors who know your work very well. And if you have any research experience or publication, that's also good. About funding and fellowship, like we have talked about before, master's is usually self-funded, and so you have to find ways to be able to get funding, like to afford the tuition. PhD is usually fully funded with tuition stipend. And internally, at your grad school, they might have like TA-ship, which is you work as a TA there, and they will pay for your tuition. They also have like research assistantship, doing research under a professor, and perhaps some schools might offer you a merit-based scholarship. You can also get scholarship or fellowship externally through like just like the NSF Graduate Research Foundation Program, and also GEM Fellowship. Those like you have to apply externally, and they are very competitive, and they have their own deadlines as well. So I'll talk about some common pitfalls that people might accidentally fall into when they're applying. So for example, for statement of purpose, you don't want a generic SOP with no faculty or program alignment. You want to talk about why the program fits you and why it matches your experience. And then just like when you talk about the faculties, just don't list names. Like for example, if you apply to like Stanford, you just say, "Oh, Lee Fei Fei is cool. That's why I want to go to Stanford." You have to like kind of match yourself and align you to their faculty. And you don't want to have it too autobiographical. So because grad apps are not college apps, so focus more on your personal growth, like academic and research during your college experience. You should tailor your statement of purpose for each school. It is definitely normal to use the same template, but make sure you change them. Um, so that like you kind of highlight some of the uniqueness of a program, and don't start too late. I have a bad time starting too late because it's due December, and I started like Thanksgiving break, and it wasn't a very good idea. It wasn't the brightest idea. So some other pitfalls to avoid is not applying strategically. You should apply it broadly for different schools and include backup options. And then look up stats of admitted students from UCSD and connect with them, so you know kind of which range of schools that you should be applying to. Um, some of the schools have specific requirements, such as for video and extra essay. And also some schools have deadlines in different time zones. So if it's in like East Coast, then you should know that their 11:59 is Eastern time, which is 9 p.m. here. So don't submit like at like 11:59 Pacific time. And it was like, wait, I thought I submitted it in the deadline, but it's actually not. So letter of recommendations. You should always ask your professors for your intern manager or intern mentors in advance. Try to ask it like 2 months before and then remind them after. So you know for certain that they will give you a recommendation letter. If you ask them like with only 1 to 2 weeks to spare, then they probably won't give you a letter, or even if they do, it might not be the best ones that they will have time to write. Um, and then you should choose the correct recommenders. So, for example, you want to find someone that knows you well. So, a renowned professor who barely knows you is worse than a lesser known professor who knows you well. Well, obviously, if you have like a professor that's famous and knows you very well, then that's also very good. Um, and then you should always provide enough context for your writers. So usually you want to share resume, statement of purpose, and experience with a recommender. It's kind of like a high school brasky, if you know that. But basically, it's like an email where you have your info, and then so they will have an easier time to fill out their recommendation letter. Other stuff are overstressing on GRE. So in fact, many programs, like I said, don't look at GRE scores. For example, like UCSD, BSMS doesn't require GRE. So sometimes if the programs that you're applying to doesn't need GRE, then don't waste the time of like doing GREs because it does take a lot of time. And then you don't have you not necessarily need publications to get in. That's more important for PhD applicants. It is helpful but not required. And a lot of master students don't have publications during their undergrad. And then also it is more important that your lab advisor is it matches your research interests, then like going to a very top ranked college, very top ranked graduate program. Because sometimes like the a lot of the resources that you get from grad school comes from your advisor. And then yeah, lastly, you should not assume that graduate school equals to success. It is not going to change your life. It is your motivation to grow that is changing your life. And so if you get rejected, that's not failure because sometimes it's due to luck or they just don't have enough spots. And sometimes like the environment is just different. It's definitely not about your ability. So yeah, some of the resources and next steps. Um, you can visit Grad Cafe or Reddit, but definitely go with your caution because they might be toxic and they have like they just yeah, you can seek insight there, but don't stress out. And you can also look at program website for faculty interest, funding infos, deadlines, info sessions, and also just link to current students. That can be very helpful. When you're working on your resume or CV, you can always ask your friends to review it, or you can go to ACM's resume review workshop, which usually happens during fall quarter, to help you build a strong profile on paper. Something I find useful when you're trying to match yourself with faculties, is through some website like CS Ranking, where you can find like you can narrow down and filter down like research areas to find professors in your field of interest. It can be very helpful for PhD applicants who wants to email for prospective advisors. So yeah, that is, I believe, our um admissions 101. We'll go into the next part. So we want to introduce our panelists. Today we have three panelists. The first one is Jonah. Jonah um was a computer engineering bachelor student at UCSD, graduated during 2023. He was the former director of marketing and sponsorship at ACM AI. And then after his bachelor, he went into BSMS at ECE, focusing on machine learning and data science. And he graduated class of 2024, which is just last year. He's currently working at Intuitive as a software engineer. And Edward Yang, he was a computer science student at UCSD during graduated class of 2022. He was former director of operations in ACM. He went to Yale for MS Computer Science and then graduated in class of 2023. And now he's working at Amazon as a software developer. And yeah, so this picture might mistaken you, which mistaken me, but he's the person on the left. Um, and then Karthik was a data science and general biology double major at UCSD, graduated in class of 2023. He was a former director of marketing and sponsorship in ACM, and he's currently at Cornell for his PhD in computational biology and plans to graduate in 2029. As a bonus, I'm not really a panelist, but I did apply during fall quarter last year. So I'm currently still an undergrad student at UCSD, planning to graduate in a month. Currently director of events at ACM and I plan to go to Stanford for MS Computer Science. And although I'm not a panelist, I'll be here to help answer questions about admissions process. So we'll start with like some general questions for the panelists. So these are pre-selected questions that we think would broadly answer a lot of your questions. So we'll just start with these. And then for the panelists, if you are comfortable sharing your thoughts on the question, that's fine. If you don't, just you can unmute yourself and yeah. So the first question is, when did you decide to go to grad school and what were your biggest hesitations?
I guess I can go first and then Jonah, do you want to go after me?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, yeah. So when I decided to go to grad school, what were your biggest hesitations? I think for me personally, probably like around my second year of undergrad, I decided to go to grad school. I really like research, did a lot of research in my undergrad. So I was like, hey, might as well continue doing research even after I graduate from my undergrad. I guess on top of that, I guess like the vibes and just like the way that you do research is also different in grad school. The t types of curriculum and the kind of knowledge that the professors expect from you. A lot of the coursework is also much more research oriented when you're in grad school. So yeah, many reasons as to why I wanted to go. Um, Biggest hesitations, probably cost. Grad school is decently expensive. Um, Mostly cost, and also it's just like it is also like a time crunch or not a time crunch. It is like it does take time, like 1 or 2 years of time. So if people want to go into the industry, that is also like whether you go industry or you go to grad school. I mean, it's like either it is sometimes it's either or, sometimes it's like an and or, but yeah, a lot of time decisions as well.
Yeah, so I guess just from my end, I think I'll maybe give like a more, I guess, practical point of view. So I think for me, I kind of took advantage of the BSMS program at UCSD. I think grad school, like this research that I think Karthik and Edward can give you a good perspective about, was not as big of an interest for me. I think it was more of kind of a backup plan, just to be completely honest. I think having the opportunity at UCSD to, I guess, go to an MS if maybe you're not sure what you're going to do after you graduate, I think that's just kind of a good backup to have, and it's kind of very convenient to be able to do. I think that's just kind of a good offering I encourage you guys to take advantage of. So hesitations wise, I think, yeah, I guess I wasn't the biggest into research. I think that wasn't my main concern. I guess I just I wasn't yeah, I wasn't sure what I was gonna do after I graduated. So I thought I'd just add on a year or two to maybe explore some more. I think Stephen brought up a good point about, taking the time to look around some more, and kind of use that time to obviously we learn a lot still during grad school, but just taking that extra time to kind of explore my options a little more. So that's kind of from my perspective. But I think yeah, Karthik can give a little bit more about the research and the perspective of that for grad school.
Um, yeah. I decided to go to grad school in, I think, the end of my second year of undergrad. And my biggest hesitation, I would say, is probably just how long it can be. I mean, my PhD program average graduation time is 5.5 years, and obviously it's a long commitment to be doing one topic of research. So that was definitely the scariest thing about it. But here I am. So
See, thank you. Let's go to the next question. So how did you choose between a master's and a PhD? Would you make the same choice again?
So I can start this off maybe. So I think this ties into kind of my last answer a little bit. So I think once again, it's kind of a function of taking advantage of kind of that BSMS program at UCSD. I think I mean, I guess to be completely honest, I think, if you could say like I had like a set job or a job I really liked, like lined up after undergraduate, maybe it would have changed. But I think once kind of using that master's as kind of like a kind of runway a little bit, I think is definitely not a bad alternative as well. So I think I got pretty lucky that my master's kind of helped me find my current job, which is a little more on the research side or on the like researchy side. So I think that was pretty cool. So. I think, obviously it's kind of a dependent choice at the end, like based on what happened. It's kind of a function of what was available at the time. Um, but I think it could go either way, in the future, just to be completely candid. And maybe Edward can say a little more.
Yeah, I guess I can give my take on doing a master's and then Karthik can just contrast it with PhD. Um, for me personally, the reason why I chose a master's and not a PhD is because, well, although I do really like AI, I'm not entirely sure which specific subfield in I really like. There's like CV, there's RL, there's NLP, bio AI or whatever. So I think master's gives me more time to just really explore the different areas of AI and just publish a couple more papers just to like figure out like, oh, this is what I really want to dedicate the next like 4 or 5 years of my life to doing research again. Would I make the same choice again? I think yes, I would like to make the same choice, but I feel like I might want to do masters for a bit longer. I did my masters in 1 year, but I feel like 2 year masters would have been more fun to do.
um, yeah. So I guess I'm a bit different from from both Jonah and Edward because I'm interested in computational biology. And so by the end of my second year, when I knew I wanted to go to grad school, I also knew I wanted to do computational biology research. And in computational biology, it's pretty common both in academic positions and in industry positions for people to have PhDs. And so just seeing it be so common around me was definitely a big factor. Also, I knew that I was gonna do a PhD, and so then I also got advised that it's like once you know you're gonna do the PhD, just go all the way, just as soon as you can. And so that's why I went straight to the PhD. Um, if I had to make the choice again, I think I would do it the same way. I think, yeah, I think I got this advice that once you know you want to do the PhD, just kind of go as fast as possible to getting there. And so that's what I did, and here I am.
Great. Let's go to the next question. Um, so this will be more on research. So what research and internship did you do during undergrad and how did you get involved?
All right, I can go. So in undergrad, starting at the end of my first year, I started working at the Salk Institute, which is uh, just across from ERC by the ocean. Um, and I started doing computational biology research there as a first year student, and then I kept going in the same lab my entire undergrad. Um, as for how I got involved, I just cold emailed. I knew I was interested in a topic. I tried looking around for professors researching in the topic, and then and then I just got lucky, I guess.
I can go next. Um, Undergrad research internships. Did an internship at Amazon, and then for research, I did research in two professors' lab, Professor Nuno in ECE, and then some research in Su's lab that Kevin's also in. Shout out to Su. How did I get involved in both of these? For Amazon, I just applied, got got accepted to the internship. For research. I just emailed the professors and I was like, hey, I really like your research. Can I do research in your lab? And yeah, that's how that came to be.
So I think yeah. So I actually did a little bit of research. I know I said like I didn't. I guess the outcome was a little bit different for me. So I did like I think one of my earlier years I was actually in like a EE lab to doing like a little bit of research. But I think the outcome for me is not was kind of the opposite as compared to maybe Karthik or Edward of like kind of wanting to do more. I think that kind of influenced me to say like I don't think academia is for me. Maybe this is like I after I graduate I want to look into going to industry. But kind of a similar process, I think, just kind of trying to put yourself out there, finding who's the research you're interested in, and kind of just introducing yourself. But yeah, just the outcome for me was a little bit different on what I took away from that experience.
Well, is it possible for you guys to like share um where you get your recommendations, like your three letter of recs from?
Um, I got one rec from Professor Nuno, one from Su. Um, I think my third one was from the previous previous director of events before me. Yeah, because I worked closely with like the ACM people.
Wait, you got a rec letter from Catherine?
Yeah, I got a rec letter from
That's
Catherine.
crazy.
I know, right?
Jonah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so I guess they were explaining it a little bit earlier, but I was actually in the BSMS, so I was in the EC BSMS program. So I was originally thinking I had to do rec letters. So I was like trying to, I guess, figure out which professors because I didn't, I guess, do too much. I was thinking maybe the professor I did some research for, but he was kind of out of scope for the EC kind of field I was thinking of. So I think just but I was thinking of some professors who I guess I talked a lot, like maybe went to office hours a lot for, but for me, I ended up not needing it just because of the nature of the BSMS program at UCSD.
Um, yeah, so I got one of my letters of rec from the professor I worked with for 3.5-ish years. And then I got another one of my letters from so in between the summer of my third and fourth year, I did what's called like a research experience for undergrads program at UCLA. And so I went to UCLA for 7-ish weeks and did research there. And I got a letter of recommendation from the professor I worked with there. And then my third letter of recommendation actually came from a, a professor whose course I took, and no one showed up to that class. Like there was only like 5 or 6 people usually, and it was a class about like genomics, which is exactly what I was interested in doing. And so I asked a lot of questions and um, just got the most out of that class, and I really enjoyed it. And then I asked for a letter of recommendation. So yeah.
I can also talk a bit about mine. I had one from my research advisor, Professor Su, whom I worked with or I work under his PhD since second year. I kind of got matched through a research program, but I know a lot of people who like went into his class and then emailed him or talked directly to him to get the opportunity to do research. My second recommendation letter was from a on-campus internship. If you know the Qualcomm Institute, I kind of got involved into that by a course called I think basically the he's not really a professor but like a research scientist who posted like a course onto like an email to LCS students, and I thought it was fun and I just submitted that and had been doing kind of a like unpaid internship for a while under him. And then my last one is from Professor Minmohan Chandrikar, who I took his CSE 152 class on computer vision, and also I tutored for him. So tutoring is also a good way to get you recommendation letters. Cool. Let's go to the next question. What are you doing now or during grad school, and how did it evolve from undergrad?
I can go first. Um, I work at Amazon now. I do research on the side, continuing some research with the prof that I'm working in at Yale. I'm also doing some independent research, just thinking of problems, building projects, that kind of stuff right now. Um, Projects and then hopefully submit a paper if it's cool enough. Um, During grad school, did research. Um, how did it evolve from undergrad? Pretty much the same thing. Um, just did research in grad school and undergrad, I guess.
So I guess on my side, um, so I guess it's a little backwards for me. So I think the outcome was, yeah, I didn't want to stay in academia, but so I guess but now I guess at Intuitive I'm on a kind of a more upstream team. I guess we're doing some kind of research slash application of like computer vision or how we can kind of use I guess just some background. Intuitive is like a surgical robotics company, and like of kind of the main thing that it provides is kind of like an endoscopic camera, or that's part of the technology. And so, kind of figuring out ways to apply some computer vision techniques from the camera feed to make some tools that surgeons can use. So it's yeah a little bit backwards. Like I think so. I think grad school really helped with kind of picking up some of the skills to kind of fit into this team. And I think it's a little bit cooler than I guess what I was. So I think it's a little bit cooler than well I guess maybe general SWE work. So I think it kind of grad school was really helpful in getting this opportunity. But I think it definitely evolved a little bit from undergrad, not knowing where I'd kind of fall into when I went into industry. So that was pretty cool.
Um, I'll try my best to give an explanation of what I do. But I guess in our bodies are made up of trillions of cells. And within each of those cells is this genetic code, which is our DNA. And that's basically the code that defines who we are and it's what makes me me and you. And between us as people, there are differences that differentiate you from me, for instance, in height or something like that. And so I'm trying to study how those differences lead to various traits or diseases that we observe in people. And you can imagine that when you have 3 billion letters, that instantly now becomes a computational problem because you can't look through 3 billion letters by hand. Um, and so, how did it evolve from my undergrad? I did my undergrad in data science and bio, and so I guess it's this very natural mix of the two subjects. And I think actually towards the um, end of my undergrad, I started to even tailor the courses towards getting towards this ultimate goal that I had of studying human DNA. And so that's how it all came to be.
Sounds cool. Um, let's go to the next question. So, what mindset, opportunities, or key decisions help you get to where you are right now? I don't know, might be a hard one.
So yeah, maybe I'll start it off from kind of the more uh, perspective of wanting to go into industry, and then they can talk about more the research side. So I think the mindset I had, I think was, yeah, I guess a good plan, I guess. I think I was it I once again I wasn't intending on going to grad school, but I think having just the backups, like a backup plan, I guess you could say, and taking advantage of kind of what UCSD offers, which in this case is kind of like a fast track way of getting into an MS program, I think is just a good kind of plan to have in mind. So I think if you're a little bit unsure of maybe what you want to do after graduation, then I think this is, I guess, just a really like easy opportunity to take advantage of that really isn't not much extra work on your side, but it can, lead to, I guess, a lot of things afterward, that can benefit you. And so, yeah, I guess the big thing on my side is just having like you don't have to have like a plan of what you want to do, but I think just, you know, having a backup, I guess, is a good way of putting it. Just like knowing, hey, if this doesn't pan out, what are some alternatives I could look at? And I think the BSMS program is a great alternative for most people.
All right. Um, I would say the one key decision out of my entire undergrad that got me to where I am today was joining a research lab as early as possible. And then not only that, but kind of sticking with it for 3 years. I feel like it's kind of this exponential gains thing where when you join a research lab as an undergrad, you're going to have a huge learning curve and it's going to take a long time to be able to make contributions. Um, and and so I feel like going through that learning curve and being really patient and then kind of reaping the exponential gains at the end of it is what um, got me to where I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I think similar answers to Jonah and Karthik. For me, I think patience is definitely something that helps with a lot of these decisions. Although I think it has been mentioned that like, yeah, it is like 2 years, you're 2 years, 4 years. At the end of the day, it's sort of like this is like a stepping stone to things you want to do in the future, maybe go into academia, maybe go into industry. So even though it does seem like there's like a very large time pressure on like, oh, we need to do X or Y by a certain like time. Um, Honestly, I don't think it really exists. Like if you want to do your master's like 2 or 3 years into industry, that is still an option. So I guess patience, being open-minded, and I guess like overall for me, I think personally, trying new things is a very important thing. I feel like we're all pretty young right now, so still worth it just to try things and then just not get shoot into something that's like further down the line, you're like, oh, I don't really enjoy it as much.
Sounds great. Let's go to the next question. So the next question is, do you have any advice for undergrads exploring grad school or a career in the industry?
All right. I can go. I would say just try to get involved as soon as possible. I think it's never too early to start. And I think, yeah, if you are interested in trying something, then go and try it. And don't be afraid to like lose time trying things that don't work. The reality is, like in life, most things are not going to work. Um, and yeah, and it's like just go and be fearless about trying something. If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't stick, it doesn't stick. I tried 10,000 things and only some of them stuck. So yeah, you never know what's going to stick. So just like try to expand your luck surface area. I guess that's the term I've seen for it.
Yeah, plus one to Karthik's answer. I completely agree with that as well. Keeping an open mindset is very important. I feel like I've tried a lot of different things. Not everything worked out, but keeping an open mindset, being willing to sometimes not succeed with stuff. I think that's very important for growth in not just grad school or career, but just like in life in general. I think for undergrad specifically, advice, mentioning that you're an undergrad to professors, I feel like is a very interesting thing because I think some professors, like if you like tell professors like, oh, I'm really genuinely interested in this kind of stuff, they're gonna be like, oh, it's a little undergrad. I think it'll be fun to have this person in my lab. So that is sort of a perk. I guess there's differences between how you want to frame yourself when you're asking professors to do research in their labs when you're like an undergrad and grad. But I think don't really need to be deterred that you don't have research experience when you're an undergrad just because professors like, oh, he probably doesn't have that much, he or she doesn't probably have that much experience anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely don't be deterred, be a little fearless. And actually, I think it's good to try a little bit of research when I guess you're not really sure, like to make that decision if you want to go into academia or into industry. I think it's good to have an exposure on both sides, just to so you can kind of balance your options and understand like what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. Um, so when you graduate, I think you have a better picture of, I guess, what you want to do. So I think try it out, I think is definitely, I guess, my advice there would be to try it out for a little bit if you can.
Those are great advices. So I guess summarize is just keep an open mindset, and then try out different things, to see if you're interested in doing a research career or just straight into doing engineering. Yeah. All right. So next question, what was the application process like for you? Do you have any tips on personal statements? So statement of purpose, letter of recommendation letter, or interviews?
Uh, I can take this one first then. Application process like for me. I think I did the same thing as Kevin, which I highly don't recommend doing. Um, I started my applications like during Thanksgiving break or even after Thanksgiving break. So I actually missed a lot of school's application times. So yeah, definitely start early. Um, yeah, I think start early, message professors. I think usually good like guideline. I think Kevin also mentioned give professors like 2 months to do stuff. Um, Generally professors take a long time. They're very busy people, so giving them a lot of time to just like write the letters is very good. Good segue into the letter recommendation. Just I think just get to know them well is like a good start. Professors you TA for, professors you do research under. I guess like just professors generally vibe pretty well with. I think those are like good ones. Yeah. Personal statement, definitely get people to review it. Um, get maybe like two or three people, different people to review it. I think that's a very good thing. There's also apparently like a UCSD like writing helping group at the library. I don't really remember the name for it, but apparently that exists. But yeah, for interviews, for my grad school, I didn't really have interviews. I think Karthik could probably answer this better because I think for masters, you don't really need interviews.
Um, yeah, it was hard. Like it was a lot of work. Um, but no, it was so. Um, I think yeah. So it started the way it worked for at least computational biology PhD programs is you first submit an application, which is a bunch of your personal information, your transcripts, and then um, your your personal statement. And then after that, the next stage is they'll invite you for an interview. And then the interviews for each school are usually like anywhere from 1 day to 3 to 4 days. And you just get interviewed by a bunch of faculty and you go to a bunch of talks and you listen in. Um, and so yeah, so I had like 7 interviews and across 2 months, and that was a really daunting process because it took up a lot of time while you're in school. Um, so yeah, I mean it's a hard process, but I guess it's worth it at the end of it. I guess my tips for personal statements, I'm going to tailor this for PhD because that's what I know. For personal statements, like what was said earlier, really focus on research. I think you have to think from the lens of the person reviewing your application. Um, and they're basically trying to evaluate, they're trying to bring in the next group of PhD students to be researchers at their institute, and they're looking for your ability to succeed as a researcher. Um, and so you need to show your ability as a researcher on your personal statement. And so then really focusing on explaining the research that you've done and contributed to, framing it the right way, and then yeah, explaining kind of the broader impact of that, and then how that's informed what you want to do next as a researcher. For letters of recommendation, I would say, yeah, it's good to always be thinking about letters of recommendation. Um, and think about who you can ask, and kind of like, you know, building connections and things like that to get those letters of recommendation. And then interviews, once you get there, at least for PhD programs, interviews are really, really random. There's a lot of variance from interviewer to interviewer, but the biggest thing I think you have to be able to explain what you've done in your research. And I think that would be my advice across the board. Yeah.
So actually, I'm a little curious, Karthik. So are like, would you say like PhD interviews are kind of like job interviews, or they're like little, they kind of like have a special like tone to them, or like they're quite a bit different?
Um, yeah, I would say they're a bit like, so I honestly, I mean, I wouldn't I wouldn't know anything about job interviews. But my guess is like when you're applying for like a software engineering position or something, they're kind of like quizzing you um about the things. I think the PhD interview is going to take more of the tone of like, oh, so tell me about some of the things that you've done. And then once you start saying that, they will ask questions and prod you left and right to try to see if you've really captured the essence of the research that you've been doing. Um, and your understanding of the field as a whole. And so, yeah, there's a lot of, as you can imagine, there's a lot of variance in those discussions. And so I think being able to explain what you did really well, and being able to spin conversations and talk about various things that are happening in the field, things that you're interested in, and how your work fits into the broader field as a whole is really important.
Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
I feel like that's pretty similar to a job interview though. Like talking about just being really confident in what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've never done job
Oh,
interviews, so
yeah, that's fair.
There's just no weak codes.
Oh yeah, no leak
But
codes.
so yeah, I guess I'll talk a little bit about letters of recommendation. And I think actually I'll hand it off to Kevin because I think he's obviously much more familiar with this process, especially because he went through it. But I think if like so I think Karthik, Edward, and I think Kevin all like worked in a lab, so they kind of had easy, not easy access, but you know like they're kind of like was a good like reference for their like technical capability and their research directly in their lab professor. But like if you're not in a lab, I think one thing I definitely recommend is making that effort to the like the classes you're in, like the professors you have classes with, to show up to office hours to ask them insightful questions, and I think that can make a good impression in getting you a rec letter from them, even though you haven't directly done any work with them. So I think if you want to like start applying to grad school, I think this is something you should start kind of, I don't know, investing in per se. Just like looking at like whose classes you're interested in and kind of making an effort to be there, even if you don't have any direct questions on like the tests or the homework. Just kind of having an inquisitive mindset, I think, could help you secure those recommendations. But I think I'll hand it off to Kevin to maybe answer that a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, thank you for all the, I guess, tips about application process. I'll kind of elaborate on my application process, which happened just a few months ago. Um, I uh, I kind of decided to do graduate applications, go to graduate school in around like this time last year. And so I started preparing for my GRE because some of the programs I'm applying to needed them. So I kind of did it a little too late. Usually people say it's better to do it earlier, like in your in like I guess the year before you're applying. But I kind of was doing it during the summer of my applying, and I only did the GRE twice, so it wasn't the best idea. So I mean I didn't have a very good score on that, so it might not be too good for my application, but a lot of the ones I applied didn't require GRE as well. And then here are some tips that you should not do what I did. I started my application during Thanksgiving break, which is like November 28th or 27th, and my first application for, I think it was Harvard, was December 1st. And I had like 2 days to finish that whole application, the statement of purpose and everything. So it wasn't the best idea because I took like two all-nighters. So definitely start early. And then I asked my recommendation letters also a little too late. I think I asked them like 3 weeks. I think that's the bare minimum. So definitely like ask them even earlier. Especially if you're not super close to that professor that you might not know they might like you might not know they will write the recommendation letter for you. Um, and also because of that, some of my recommendation letter came in late. I had to individually message the programs that my rec letters are coming in late. So also not a good idea. And then I didn't do interviews. None of my programs send me interviews. I think usually that's not a thing for master programs, but for PhDs. And then yeah, I think the applications is just in December, and for a lot of my like statement of purposes, I kind of used the same template, except I changed out like the faculties and why their school motivates me to go. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Uh, have your views on grad school changed after attending one?
I could take this one first. I think for me personally, I thought grad school was going to be very like stifling a lot of people who are just like interested in research and stuff like that. But no, it was actually quite the opposite. Maybe it's because I think maybe for Yale and some other schools, a lot of the undergrad and grad classes are together. For grad, it's just like a lot more in depth and stuff like that. But I met a lot of my closest friends from there, and a lot of them are undergrads, just did a lot of projects and stuff together. So that is something, a very nice thing that I was not expecting, but I think it was pretty nice. Otherwise, I think the research aspect of grad school still there. A lot of professors that you can just do research under, especially because a lot of the coursework is very project oriented, where any of these projects you do has potential to become like a research project to paper.
So yeah, so I guess for me, I think yeah, kind of like Edward, I think I definitely envisioned grad school being, all this kind of like everyone's like super focused on the research, like that's how you're gonna make the most out of it. But I think definitely the coursework is definitely still very interesting. I think there's kind of a extra level of rigor to it compared to some of your undergrad, even your upper div courses. So I think that's still a great experience, even if you don't end up doing the research side, is there's still a lot to learn. And I think that's definitely applicable in industry as well, and it opens up some opportunities. So it changed a little bit. I think still, I think you kind of learn a lot of great stuff even outside of the research. So I think that is a plus one for just the coursework side of things.
Um, yeah, I think grad school is kind of exactly what I expected it to be, which is just a lot of research. I'm going to speak from PhD point of view, but I think yeah, the focus of the PhD is really not on coursework at all. Like from my experience, at least, no one really cares about the courses. It's more about just research, and so I think the one thing that I would say is to kind of enjoy a PhD. I feel like you have to really, really be interested in research and the process of doing research and being able to keep up that interest for 5.5 years. And so definitely before doing a PhD, one should be very sure that that is what they want to do. Um, that's what I'll say.
I'm just wondering, Karthik, what do you plan to do after your PhD? Are you continuing into academia as a professor, or do you plan to go into the industry?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I have no idea to be honest. I think like when I came into grad school, I thought maybe I would stay in academia. Now I don't know. I guess we'll see. I guess the way that I answer it is based on the research that I do and the direction that my research takes. I will do whatever I will take whatever direction that I can make the most impact in is what I'll do.
I see. Thank you. Let's go to the next question. I think this is the last one before we go into the live Q&A. Is there anything you wish someone had told you before you started your grad journey?
I guess for me, I guess not much. I think it was a good experience. I think it was definitely worthwhile. I think one thing though is like I know I've been kind of selling it as like a kind of like a backup plan, but I think there is still a little bit of preparation you have to do. I think there's certainly an extra level of rigor that you have to prepare yourself for. It's not something I guess you could kind of waltz your way into. Like even if you're doing super well in your undergrad, I think there's still just a little bit of extra preparation that you need to just be prepared for in terms of rigor. So just keeping that in mind. And I guess the other thing, I guess this is UCSD specific, but like planning your classes well. I think like in undergrad, you can kind of get away with a lot of different class schedules and being able to graduate on time. But at the grad level, I think the class offerings are much, much less. They're like very quarter specific or something like that. And there's like very, I guess, few elective options or there's like a lot of core classes you have to take to graduate. So just also planning your kind of course schedule at the very beginning, I think could go a long way in making sure you're on track to graduate as well, or kind of don't get stuck in kind of a bureaucratic mess in that sense. But maybe, yeah, Edward can talk more about maybe Yale specifically, or maybe outside of UCSD.
Uh, Karthik, can you go first? I'm still thinking about my response to this.
Yeah, sure. So I think research can be really rewarding because you're doing something and you're creating new knowledge that didn't exist previously, and you're doing something that no one has ever done before. But it's also really, really mentally um, challenging and hard. Um, you're gonna do a lot of things. You're gonna do a lot of work, and then at the end of 3 or 4 months of work, you might have to look at all your results and basically like be willing to throw it all away. And that's much different from when you're in courses where it's just you work towards this like end of the course and you work towards a grade and there's a clear tangible kind of outcome that comes out of that. It's not the same in research, and that can really like take it out of you and be really hard to digest. And so I think kind of building a lifestyle where you're able to weather that storm of constantly things not working, um, and keep persevering onward. It requires a lot of grit. It requires a lot of persistence, and that is what I would say is I wish someone had told me before I started my journey. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can go. Wish something that someone told me. Um, I guess it's sort of related to what both Jonah and Karthik said. Going into grad school, master's, PhD, there tends to be less guidance on like what you should be doing at any specific time. Especially like highlighting Jonah's point, courses, not every course is very clear on like, oh, you need to take this at specific times. Everything is like, oh, you just need to take, you can just take like whatever courses. So figuring out what specific courses you want to take in the limited time is important. And then also just like, it's a lot more freedom in the sense it is sort of like, I guess there's like less guidance in like what you're expected to do at any specific point in time. And I feel like that's very different from undergrad, where it's like people are like, oh, hey, you need to do these classes to graduate. But then in grad school, it's like, oh, you could take this area, these classes, and it's like they're not really like specific classes kind of thing.
Okay, these are all many like philosophical responses. But I think they're all like very good advices for people who wants to get into grad journey. I actually talked to some current master, actually graduating master students, who gave me like very real responses where one person told me he wished that people have told him to do leak code when he started his grad journey, because when he's doing interviews, he found out that leak code is more important. But that's one thing. Another person told me that actually before going into grad school, like full quarter or full semester, you can actually already reach out to professors or PhDs before that if you want to get into research. Like you can apply, you can like once you have your decisions, you can already ask the PhDs or the professors there to probably like get into the research maybe when you're even in undergrad there or during the summer. So once you get into the school, it's much easier for your transition to happen. That's one of the um responses that I got from someone I talked to. Yeah.
Just
Cool. Mhm.
curious, did you talk to anyone, I guess, who was thinking of using the master's as a stepping stone into a PhD? Or maybe premature for you, but is that something you're thinking of doing, or
A lot of
you think the
people I
perspective changes there?
a lot of people I talked to who they said they when they did a master's or when they decided to do master and PhD, it was because they're not super certain they want to go into a PhD yet, since it's like a long commitment for like 5 years. So they kind of want to like try it out during masters for like 2 years to see if they are really that interested into research. And then some people might just don't have, like what you said, enough publication or research experience to go directly into PhD. So that's why they took 2 years or a year of masters to build that resume. And yeah, I have talked to people who like transitions like go to the masters because they didn't really know if they want to do a master or PhD, and then from then go on to a PhD. Yeah, that's also one path. And it is true that like increasingly more people are going like when they're determined, they go straight from their bachelor just to PhD. Yeah, cool. I think that's the last general questions for our panelists. We have around 14 minutes left, so we'll start our live Q&A. So if any of you have any questions that you want to ask to the panelists, you can either send in chat or unmute yourself and then just say it.
I guess I'll ask a question. For going to like your master's, like a lot of my research experience, like I want to do an MSCS, but my research experience is more on the bioinformatics side, and I'm also doing like some LLM research. Is there Does the research area necessarily matter? Like I'm doing CS stuff within like obviously bioinformatics, but I don't know like it would like impact my application.
I would say for masters specifically, it doesn't matter as much. Masters is more looking for like, oh, you have relevant experiences in like the overall field, like you sort of know what you want to do. I guess going back to my own example, I did a little bit of computer vision research, also some computer graphics research in undergrad, but now I'm doing like bioinformatics and like immuno-oncology research, so there was a large transition. I would say it's also dependent on program. Like if you're doing bioengineering research and you want to do computer science, that is more of a stretch, but if it's still like computer science related, I think it's a fair take.
I think if you're applying to masters, it doesn't really matter that much. Because I think for masters, definitely your publication, like your research experience, like stands out. Just because it doesn't have to be the same research area. Since like they probably it's their master. A lot of the MSCS programs are not super research focused. they could be coursework and stuff. So they wouldn't really expect you to have like a lot of research experience, other like not like a PhD. And always like in your statement of purpose, you don't have to necessarily talk. Like you can talk about your public, like your research experience, but you can still talk about like your goal in grad school about like doing this different area of studies. One more thing is you can apply under that research area that you want to do, and then in grad school you switch your area because I think in master's it's pretty easy to switch and then do a different thing.
I guess yeah, are you is like do you think you'll switch out of like into a different research field? Like out of bioinformatics or out of I think you said NLP?
Wait, me? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, probably. I really like doing like I'm doing cancer research right now, but and I really like doing that. But I wanted to kind of do both if that was possible. But I wanted to do like the coursework of like an MSCS, which is like a MS in bioinformatics.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I think yeah, definitely what Kevin said. I think also if you're worried about maybe like how it like looks at the reviewer side, I think a lot of it's like how you frame it as well. I think like you said, bioinformatics has a lot of intersection with CS. So being able like when you write your statement of purpose or something like that, to focus more on the CS side, maybe and kind of maybe tying it there, I think could also like go a long way as well and just kind of fr the framing of how you write it, and when you apply. But yeah, maybe Karthik actually could say a little bit more about the CS side of like bioinformatics or maybe how he framed it. I'm curious as well, actually.
Oh, um, is your question like how to frame computational biology research from a computer science point of view?
Yeah, maybe if you have some advice there, or yeah, if maybe you were to do something similar, I guess because you've done a lot of bioinformatics, maybe you could say like where you think like the computer side stands out or something like that.
Yeah, I would say I don't know, if you're trying to pitch 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 the research as like a computer science research, I would say focus on the computational problems that you solved, and less on the biological domain. I think you want to provide like a bare bones explanation of the biology, and then just kind of focus more on on the actual computational problems. And I feel like at least a lot of the approaches that are developed in computational biology can be taken to other fields. Um, and so I feel like spinning something where if you see parallels in two different places and you feel like a method that is being used in the biology space can be shifted into another space, that's potentially an interesting application. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming ideas, but yeah.
Um, is that a good response to you, Rican?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Um, anyone else has a question? Don't be shy. All right. I guess I'll give like maybe 30 more seconds. If you have any. Otherwise, we'll go into, oh, someone just sent a message. Yeah, so Ryan Chan asks, would you recommend any professors in more of the AI side of things? Is that like during your undergrad? So it also really depends on because AI is a very big field. There's like NLP, so natural language processing, reinforcement learning with robotics, and different stuff. So, um, I think the best way is I believe there's like some ai.ucsd.com and they have like a whole faculty list, and just like looking into it and seeing what their research areas are. For example, if you get into RL, um, like robotics, they're professors like you can talk to I would recommend talking to the PhDs or other students part of their lab to just know how their lab is like because I have heard people who said, not from UCSD, but some schools, like some labs from other schools, have like professors that are like very famous, but they also their lab is also very stressful and like toxic. They have to like host like team meetings at 3 a.m. Um, and it's mandatory. So sometimes like you might not know that before you go to the lab. And so it's definitely good to like talk to a student from that lab and then just knowing what's going on there. And yeah.
This isn't going to directly answer the question. But I think if you're not particularly attached to a certain field of research, or even if you are, I would say like when you are looking for a lab, I feel like if you can try to get a sense of whether this lab would really be a really great support network for you, that's a really, really good thing if you can end up in a really supportive lab environment. I tremendously benefited from being in a lab in my undergrad, which really they had a lot of trust in me, and they kind of like were willing to give me a lot, and then also give me a lot of mentorship, and that tremendously um, benefited my trajectory. And so I feel like yeah, as you're looking looking around for labs, I feel like if you can see a place where you feel like you're going to get a lot of support, whether that be from the professor or from a PhD student who seems really keen to do something, um, if you see that, that's a really, really good sign. And I would prioritize that, honestly, sometimes even more than the research field itself.
And then maybe, yeah, I guess if you're not deciding on a field as well, like I think, or there's usually some sort of class that could give you some exposure. So maybe like dipping your toes in and taking one of those elective classes could kind of help you make your decision in deciding a field as well. Like I think like 151B if you want to do deep learning, or just a lot of examples of those classes. And then I guess I don't know if I think Kevin might have mentioned it, but csrankings.com, they usually show like stratified by professor and kind of field. So that could be a good reference point as well. For like you said, NLP or robotics. I think there's definitely an NLP tag. I want to say there's robotics as well. I haven't looked in a while, but yeah, from UCSD you could kind of probably put a filter there and find relevant professors.
Yeah, I would say since you said about NLP or robotics, it's not like probably should research more about it because I don't think because not every one of us has been into every lab that professor has. So some professor like might have some side that we don't know about. But you can always like for NLP there are classes like CSE 156 taught by Rose wait 156 taught by who? Not really sure, but that's like the natural language processing class. And then for robotics, there's also like that's a good question. I think CSE 150B goes into some reinforcement learning, and there's also graduate classes if you're interested. Some professors in NLP, I'm not so sure, but for robotics, there are Xiaolong Wang in the ECE department and also Hao Su in the CSE department. And there's also other professors like I think Henrik Chris something also do
Christensen, yeah, and then Tennyson.
yeah, and a few other professors. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Otherwise, I don't know if we have enough time, but I was thinking of doing like a breakout room networking thing where if you have like specific questions that you want to ask the panelists, you can just go into their respective breakout room. So if you have any questions for everyone, please throw them out now.
I had a question. As like I'm graduating pretty quickly in 2 years, so I have very little like industry experience, and more of my like most of my experience is like 90% on the research side of things. Is it? Do you think like do you think it'd be better to maybe like take a gap year and maybe do some industry and then apply, or would it still be okay even with like the lack of industry experience to just apply? What is it like for fall 2026? It would be like this fall,
But yeah,
this upcoming fall.
to answer your question, it doesn't matter. I think if you have either one, it's fine. Like you don't necessarily need industry experience. For example, for me, even though I say have an internship, that's like part of the school and it's more like a research thing. So technically, I don't have any industry experience. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
That kind of thing. Thank you.
But maybe, yeah, one alternative viewpoint is maybe, yeah, definitely not necessary for grad school, but it could be good to get a little bit just to see like if you like industry or like how you balance the two, to make the decision like after you graduate, like which one would you more prefer to go to, is also a consideration you could say there.
All right. Any more questions? I think Edward has to leave at 6:30. Not sure if any of the other panelists would be available for maybe like 5 to 10 more minutes in a break.